Welcome to my next installment of Reading the Sky. Today we are looking at April, and I like to look at it as looking at the month like a system, not a horoscope. So we just came off the end of our pink full moon in Libra. Themes of that, we have the moon in Libra, which is called to by the energy of air, which is all about communication, balance, and dynamics. And Libra is ruled by the 7th house, all about partnerships, marriage, and the dynamics that we live by. So during this pink full moon, there is a true peace and a harmony that can be achieved, and not built on avoidance or conflict. It is an invitation for honing your skills, active listening, diplomacy, negotiation, mediation, all the aspects of Libra and balancing of the scales. In this time, we need to learn to discern trustful confidence, not to put our faith in people that may try to manipulate you during this time. Doesn't have to be romantic, or it can be in work, career, platonic relationships, professional. Don't allow this manipulation to undermine your power. During this time, balance in these relationships are consciously created and cultivated. So plant those seeds and you can reap what you sow later. Some questions that we are being asked during that moon is, how do we show up in connections? What is our part in those patterns at play? And how do we contribute to those relationship dynamics? Something else to reflect on: how much space do we give to those around us versus ourselves? And how do our priorities and values line up with that? There may be also questions and challenges around compromises, boundaries, unspoken expectations, and an opportunity may arise to revisit relationship standards and how we fit into them. We love to talk about a full moon, but I always like to see what the other planetary objects are doing around that time. So during that time, while we had our full moon in Libra, we also had Venus making a square with Pluto in Aquarius. Trying to find my visual. So we have Venus creating a square, which is an angle of tension and challenge with Pluto. Venus, which has just moved into her domicile of Taurus, is also the ruler of this full moon. And it is just in the early degrees of Taurus, meaning she has just entered the cycle. The early degrees is how it moves through the constellation. Early signs is just approaching into it, while we go towards the late signs where it starts to shift towards the next sign. So Venus is in a lot of her domicile during this time, and there is also a little bit of Chiron conjunction energy, which is our wounded healer, and that sign is in Aries. So all of this to say, there will be an opportunity to reflect on alignment between relationships and core values. Reminder to prioritize what is meaning and nourishing to us. With the Pluto energy, there will be a layer of intensity of experiences. Pluto is all about deep transformation. So this will expose any deeper dynamics surrounding your attachment, your love, your desire, how you move through these energetic exchanges. And with Venus and the Pluto. There might be some financial aspects. How do you entangle money with your relationships? And power. If there's any power imbalances, Libra is all about finding a way to tip the scales. May need to look deeper at whether we have an unconscious need for control, fear of vulnerability, desire to dominate others, or have them dependent on us in order to feel safe. And this can lead to how we make our choices in relationships, our behavior in those relationships, and the type of people that we may attract or be attracted to. There's that desire for passion, intensity, experiences all around romance or love in whatever aspect, and it can feel transformative. That's the Pluto. But we need to allow vulnerability and intimacy to transform and cultivate these relationships and connections, and make sure they are passionate but sustainable rather than compulsive. Another aspect that happened yesterday, April 1st, we had our moon. If I can find my moon. I lost my moon. Our moon did also square Jupiter, who is in Cancer, and a quincunx, I can't even pretend to pronounce that, in conjunct to Mercury. The square between the Sun in Aries, this moon in Libra, Jupiter in Cancer, this whole dynamic, this whole little grouping, cluster, meeting of planets, this can highlight patterns of overgiving, abundance and excess, overextending ourselves, overdoing, overpromising. Jupiter magnifies whatever he is interacting with. So this Jupiter energy can help us feel more generous, but we have to be more mindful of these exaggerations and excess. There's that optimism, there's that benevolence, thinking with the glass half full and how we approach people in relationships, making sure we have an open heart. But there's that square tension. We need to balance that enthusiasm with discernment, not to be a little bit naive with that generosity, and not to completely give everything that we have so that we can maintain a sustainable energy foundation. We don't want to pour all our faith, all our love and energy into manipulative people or one-sided relationships. This Moon and Mercury dynamic can cause difficulties in articulating our emotions, finding a meeting point between thoughts and feelings. And a little bit of that inner dissonance. The emotions may be complex, overwhelming, incoherent, but we may be having a difficulty with expressing that in an authentic way. Misunderstandings can come out of this, and a difficulty in communicating or expressing these emotions. The final pair in the party of the full moon yesterday, we had the moon, and now we have an opposition, another difficult angle. We have the full moon, and we are opposing Saturn and Neptune, some big forces at work. So we have our kind of outer ring planets, kind of outer scope, wider scope, collective energy. And so this highlights tension between our desire to connect, share, merge, feel, kind of be on the same wavelength as others. And this is where we have to really honor our needs and desires and set boundaries to protect our energy. So that's Saturn, who is currently in Aries, so we need to have that strong boundary for ourselves. This will also bring awareness to our tendency to overextend ourselves emotionally, kind of like we mentioned before, and we may abandon our true selves when we're in a relationship to prioritize others' needs and desires over our own. So Saturn is about boundaries. Neptune is all about illusion and kind of the fog beneath. Sacrifice. What are we sacrificing? We may have kind of excessive idealism of our partners. Wishful thinking, kind of self-deception of our own lens of the relationship. And we may be projecting our wishes and wants onto others, which will inevitably lead to disappointment and resentment. We need to learn through this aspect how to be compassionate without losing sight of our boundaries, needs, and our personal capacity. But moving on, let's look at the rest of April. Not as quite turbulent as March, but still a lot of stuff coming through. We are currently in Aries season. We are moving into our April Arian natal charts. This next Thursday, the 9th, we have a pretty big shift I definitely want to talk about. We have one of our inner planets moving into Aries, as we will create a stellium or group of the same sign through the month. So we do have a lot of that Aries energy. Aries is the ram. It is the beginning of the zodiac cycle. It is all about I am, the self, about being assertive, true to our authentic selves, and not afraid to take charge of it. Highlighted as the fire element of desire and action, and ruled by the first house, which is the body, the self, all about our internal lens of the world. What do I say that for? The first ingress we're going to talk about is Mars entering Aries. Mars is ruled by Aries. That is its domicile. So it will have this full force of unbridled, dynamic energy until May 18th. So for a while, we're going to have this surge of energy, vitality, willingness to make things happen, take advantage of perhaps honing your leadership adjacent skills, push yourself out of your comfort zone, deepen your trust in yourself and instincts. We're going to renew our relationships with strength, practice assertiveness, and we're going to gravitate towards what is true and energizing to us. So take action. But there's also the shadow side of it. If you feel like you need to act right now, pause. This transit might be testing whether you can tell instinct from illusion, especially if we have that Neptune energy coming on. We're moving on to mid-April. We have Tuesday, April 14th. We have another movement into Aries. Mercury will be joining the party. Mercury is going to enter Aries. Mercury is all about the mind, communication, intelligence, learning. So Mercury does pretty well in Aries. It kind of gives fire and oomph to that brainstorming, gives energy to those long conversations with loved ones. We become a little more courageous in thinking, direct, quick in decision making, and then we have that courage to speak our truth without having to over-explain or second-guess. Basically, Mercury in Aries doesn't ask if it should, it asks how fast it can. It can tend to be a little blunt and reactive, so just beware of that. People may speak from distorted conclusions, and arguments can ignite fast, so the invitation is to express authentically but tactfully and without creating unnecessary conflicts just for the sake of conflict. Around that time, right before that Tuesday, April 13th, Mars, just jumping back to Mars, Mars is going to conjunct Neptune and Saturn as well. We know that Neptune and Saturn just had a party with the moon. This is where I put a pause. I didn't find my cards. Okay. So we have Mars. And then we have conjunct. So conjunct Neptune and Saturn. So this will put Mars firmly and solidly on solid ground. Fire meeting structure, meeting illusion. So just make sure you don't let that affect your actions, and don't let it cloud your mind, because don't forget Mercury will also be entering the parties right after that. So just be careful how you think and process during that time. Then we're moving into the new moon. We have the new moon on April 17th, which is a Friday, and this time it will be the opposite from the full moon, which is in Aries. I cannot find Aries to save my life. Found the fire, but so new moon in Aries. So this is your energetic reset. The new moon is always about a new chapter of your healing journey. We're going to be in the late degrees of Aries and conjuncting to Chiron, or the wounded healer. So this might kind of bring light to old wounds around our self-assertion, self-trust, our ability to go after desires, and showing up rather, than waiting to be ready or for the perfect. Healing is done through risk and showing up rather than waiting to be perfect or have that perfect moment. It's all about self-improvement. Might be more of a solitary kind of energy, while we kind of ruminate on these wounds that might be coming up. Things to think about. Where have you been stalling your own beginning? What identity are you ready to step into immediately? What would happen if you just started? And don't forget, this is coming off of our Mars, Saturn, Neptune interaction with confusion, pressure, and distorted action, and April 14th, where Mercury was in Aries. So fast, reactive speech. So, all right, after all that chaos, what are you actually choosing? Yeah. Let's move on. So then we have April 19th on a lovely Sunday. We have the beginning of Taurus season. So our sun moves into the next sign, which is Taurus. Taurus is the bull. It is all about possession, having. It is all about being grounded and a little bit stubborn. But it's also about enjoying luxury, enjoying the finer things in life. It's kind of like Libra with enjoying arts and aesthetics, because it is an earth element, so it's all about stability and ruled by the second house of possessions and being okay with being surrounded by lovely things. So the big energy shift into Taurus is our relationship with ourselves, our bodies, and with pleasure in general. It's a time to cultivate receptivity, strengthen our self-worth that should have been, carried over from Aries season. Welcome more abundance into our lives. At this time too, it's also important to stay grounded, connect with the earth, honor the rhythm of our bodies. But as I said, it's a foundation, and it's time to consolidate what was initiated during Aries season. Coming to the close, the Friday of April 24th, we do have find her again. We have Venus entering Gemini. I saw her. Where'd she go? Is she right in front of me? Probably. We have Venus entering the lovely sign of Gemini, which is an air element ruled by the third house. But Venus does fairly well in the sign of Gemini. There's a valley of curiosity. We see relationships as learning opportunities. We also are a little bit more sociable. We enjoy starting conversations with new people. And it also gives you a little bit of curiosity in educational pursuits and sharing ideas with others. So any endeavors that are around the ideas of learning, communication, like storytelling, networking, community building, that's all gonna be kind of boosted by that shift. So that invitation that day is to be open with new people, embrace more lighthearted approaches to life and relationships, and invest in learning. Let's see. And then we get to Saturday, right after Saturday, April 25th, we have Uranus moving into Gemini. And that's because we're getting towards the later signs, later degrees of Taurus. So we're starting to see a little bit of that Gemini energy come through, which is the next sign in the cycle. But Uranus moving into Gemini is pretty big because Uranus is, or Uranus, it depends how mature you are. Uranus is one of the furthest planets, so it stays in signs for a long time. It's going to stay in Gemini until 2032 or 2033. And Uranus is all about powerful collective shifts. This is a pretty big moment. It's inaugurating a period of drastic change in thought processes, communication, connection. It's going to revolutionize educational shifts, methods of learning and sharing information. It's going to have an accelerated pace of mental activity and communication. There might be a gravitation towards new paradigms and unconventional approaches. It's going to challenge what we have been taught, how to think critically, question mainstream narratives. Does this sound a little kind of on the nose for some of us? I know some very advanced astrologers that I've been following. A lot of them are talking about this date to keep an eye on, because it's going to, we're going to see this on a worldwide level. So however you want to take that message, mark the date. We're getting a big shift in this time. But to conclude everything, April opened up. We're coming out of the light, this foggy, heavy March energy with the eclipse season, Mercury retrograde. We might have been having trouble with motivation and clarity, and self-doubt and hesitation was kind of like holding us in the ground. But we're going to shift into more lighter and more dynamic kind of an atmosphere, since we're getting that mutable energy of Gemini kind of popping into the mix, along with that fire of the Aries. So, take advantage of this. And as we then shift into Taurus season, that earth element is going to give us a reminder to stay grounded and connected to our physical body, the earth, and focus on what genuinely resonates instead of just following the crowd. But overall, that is my overview of reading the sky. Follow along as I sow above, sow below, sow within, sow without. But thank you guys.